What's up, guys? This is Jose from eXp Realty, and I'm gonna try to hold this phone for as long as that I can before my shoulders start giving out. I'm over here at the Wiregrass Ranch and Sports Complex, or the Sports Complex in Wiregrass Ranch, I should say, over in Wesley Chapel. And everybody knows that I usually take I shouldn't say everybody, but most of you guys know who are listening to this, watching this video and listening to the podcast, that I take morning walks early in the morning. Been walking for about 3 miles. And take typically about a mile and a half in, my brain starts waking up, and I start thinking about uh, the opportunity to speak to you guys and educate about real estate and what's going on in the world. And this morning I got to thinking about a topic that I wanted to speak about, which are doing actual consultations when you're looking to sell or buy a house. And one of the things that I see in the real estate world, and it's not anything new, and it's really to each their own as well, is that a lot of times from a realtor's perspective, it's a normal practice for real estate agents to purchase business from big major websites such as Zillow, Realtor.com, and they purchase these leads that get distributed to them in hopes that they can answer the phone and speak to that person, that potential buyer or seller, and essentially win over that business so that they can sell a house and make their get their fruits of labor and earn their commission. But it's easier said than done, because there's a lot of failure that goes with that. And you know, from the outside looking in, and for someone who's kind of responsible for doing the operations of our team, one of the most difficult things to do for realtors is to win that relationship and earn that relationship with people, because they don't know you for anything, and you really have to take the time to cultivate a relationship if you are able to do so. And from a consumer's position, you know, we as consumers will, sit on the website and we'll look at pretty houses, and some of us have the intentions to buy or sell, and some of us don't, or some of us have a different timeline as to when we want someone to approach us, right? And then you got also the mindset that you may not want to have a relationship with someone to do real estate. You just want to talk to somebody and then eventually go on to the next person until you're ready to buy or sell, right? So whatever the recipe is for the realtor or even for the consumer as to what works for them, I do want to emphasize the importance of having consultations. Quite honestly, I would say about 90 to maybe 95% of my business tends to be a relationship-based business. When it's not business that is being referred to me from past clients, and it's just brand new business of people that found me on the website or on my Facebook or Instagram, whatever it is, sometimes those tend to be the most difficult to arrange an appointment with. And the consultation is super important for both parties. But more for the consumer's perspective, let me kind of talk to you guys about the importance of it. First off, you really want to sit down once you feel like someone is understanding you by telephone. If you're taking the time to let somebody listen to your circumstance and they're asking all the right questions and you feel like you vibe with them, that phone conversation is a good first step as part of your interview process, right? So in reality, when you're talking to realtors, it should be a 2 to 3 step interview process, right? The very first thing is the phone call. The second thing is actually meeting that person physically in their office, in your home, at a Starbucks, wherever you want to meet them. And the third thing is actually having them, once you start showing them how, once you start looking at houses, try to pay attention to their style of their demeanor in the way they go about their business with you, and if it's a good chemistry or if it's a good fit with you. So it's a three-stage process, right? It starts with the phone. It starts when you meet the person at their office, and then when you're actually physically being shown houses. So it's no different like from when I hire staff people, right? I have a multi-step process to make sure that I'm bringing the right person onto our team that fits our world and fits our culture. It should be the same thing with the consultation, that, I wouldn't necessarily shy away from phone calls from realtors. It can be overwhelming. It can be exhausting. But you should know within the first 2 minutes if that person's even worth your breath of continuing to talk to them. I would politely probably, let them know that you're going to call them later or whatnot. But the phone conversation is super important because you do want to take the time to make sure that that person listens to your circumstance and not necessarily is sharing with you everything they've done and all their awards and all this other stuff. But that phone conversation is super important to have. And the advice that I would give you guys in that phone conversation is make sure that they're listening. Make sure that whatever your needs are, they appear to have solutions for. And just make sure that that personality is somebody you vibe with, right? And you're not necessarily committing to that person, just yet. But what you can do is once you've had enough conversations with enough people by phone, let's say 2 or 3 people, then what you want to do is you want to sit down with these folks and meet them in person. And you want to, go over, you want to have an idea about what you're going to be conversing about to make sure it's worth your time. So, for example, our consultation process is talking. A lot of times when we're talking to buyers, we're really kind of listening in and confirming a lot of the things that we heard by phone, and then we're talking a little bit about financing and what to expect, and then after that we're talking about the home buying process and what happens when you go under contract, and the timing of everything, right? So the consultation process is super important. I think it's something that it's not a normal practice where you can expect a realtor to say to you, hey, would you like to meet me in the office for a consultation? To be honest with you, that happens very rarely. It's a small amount of realtors that actually do that because they know that's the right way of doing business. But you should be, as a consumer, asking if you can meet in the office or somewhere, so that it is part of your step 2 interview process and feeling out this person and seeing them eye to eye, right? And that's really where the relationship is formed, and that's really where you can understand if this person understands what you're trying to accomplish for yourself or for your family. Okay? So many times I think that what happens is that you'll go on one of the big major websites, you'll see a property that you want to go look at, you successfully find somebody to go show you that house, and then once you go see the house, most of the time that's not the right house, or it's not the right time for that house for you to make a decision. And then a lot of times the salesperson, the realtor, feels forced to do anything in their power to sell you something or to try to gain a relationship with you. And it just feels a little forced. It doesn't feel authentic or organic, because they may be under the stress and pressure of leading you to that next step, so that it works out for everybody involved, right, in this transaction. So my advice here is that, a lot of times, however you're getting to a realtor, take the time to talk to a few people and try to lock down talking to 2 or 3 people that you felt that vibe with you very well within the first 2 to 3 minutes on a phone conversation. And then my advice is to really meet with them in person again and see which one validates what you felt the first time around, right? The consultation is super duper important. I would highly encourage it for the consumer and even the realtor, whoever's listening to this video and this podcast. The relationship is super important to form, to have a level of understanding of each other. Some of the questions you want to ask is not just so necessarily so much about what your needs are, but you want to talk about communication and the expectation of communication, right? The method of communication. So some of us don't mind texting, but is your realtor a texting type of person? Or is the consumer a texting type of person? Maybe they don't work very well with technology. I have a couple that has been around in Tampa for over 30 years. They run a couple of restaurants, and they're not very tech savvy. They actually don't even have a cell phone. They do utilize their email address, but they're very difficult to get a hold of because they run a restaurant business, and they usually only take one day off, and it can be at any given day of the week. Now that always doesn't work for me because as much as I want to be available for people, that doesn't always happen. And so I have to find one of my team members that can attend to them in the way they need to be attended to, so that they're experiencing the best service possible to themselves according to their expectations. So that appointment is a great time to say, hey, can you give me an idea of what your hours are, and do you work Monday through Sunday, or do you take a day off during the week? Which, everybody should. Everybody should take a day off during the week. But whatever your expectations are of that person, it's super important. It should be one of those interview questions that you're talking to each other and asking each other to make sure it's a good fit, and that you're not going to experience any kind of problems with communication. And then, because if you do come across problems like that, you set yourself up for a very unusual circumstance that no one really wants to be in, and you're going to feel dissatisfied, and you're not going to know how to communicate that to your professional, or you're just going to slowly but surely let go of that person in a nice way. So having the proper interview questions is super duper important. Communication, method of communication. Make sure that in that appointment, that you're not just talking about the basics of what you're looking for in what area. You need to go really in depth about your situation. So for example, if you have a pet or a dog, that has a lot to do whether you're going to need a backyard or a fenced backyard or not, right? It also depends on the size of the dog. So the details make a big difference. The consultation is super significant because it's going to save you a lot of time in the long run in so many ways. Our saying is that we would rather ask you 50 to 100 questions and spend an hour to an hour and a half with you at a consultation, getting to know each other, but also getting to know the criteria of what you're looking for in depth, right? Because if you can game plan in that consultation, you learn so much about each other, and you learn so much about the market and about what's out there realistically, that it saves you a lot of time, so that when you do start looking at houses, you're looking at the right houses. You're not looking at 75 houses just for peace of mind, right? You're looking at the 15 or 20 or 10 houses, however long it takes. You're looking at the right houses, the right ones that are worth your time, that is worth your gas money. Because remember, it shouldn't be a HGTV tour, right? It should be something that where when you're utilizing your time, because you're utilizing your time away from your family, away from just livelihood, right? And it can be energy consuming, that when you're out there looking at houses, it takes a lot out of you. So if you are going to spend time, rightfully so, looking at properties, you want to make sure you're looking at the right ones, right? The ones that feel like the perfect match. And don't something that I've discovered is that even though we look at the 10 or 15 right houses, don't feel like some things can't change, because they can change. Because what happens is that when you start getting out there and you start looking at the right houses, you start finding out that there might be some things that might change in the criteria and in your wants and needs. And that's perfectly okay and understandable, because you want to get to that point rather much sooner rather than later, so that you can pivot and make adjustments, right? And then start looking at the right ones after that. All right. So my piece of advice and my 2 cents is for both the realtor, but mostly for the consumer. If you're selling a house, something that we didn't touch on, you want to have that sit down. You want to have an idea of what expectation you're going to have from the realtor. Are you expecting them to have a formal presentation, a PowerPoint slide, to talk about their real estate company, to talk about how great they are? Is that something that's important to you? Are you expecting that person to be just straightforward, honest and transparent, and just to really kind of listen into what you need to do and how to do it in a very professional manner so that you can kind of get things moving along? Understand what your expectation is, what the communications and the method of communications are that work for you as a consumer, and understand that process and systems that's designed for you to be successful in your decision to sell or buy a house. A lot of times you need to really ask what that process is like based on that realtor's expectations. Every realtor might have a different process, right? Some a little bit more in depth than others. And so you need to understand and interview a few people to understand what that process is and how does that benefit you in terms of money, in terms of time, in terms of stress, right? So these are all things you want to be taking into account. So do me a big favor. Have the consultation, whether you're buying or selling. Answer that phone when you feel it's time for you to answer the phone, and make sure you're talking to at least 2 realtors, and find somebody that you vibe with. Find a couple of people that you vibe with. And then after that, you take it to step 2 and do an interview with them. Have tons of questions written down on a piece of paper that you would like to ask them, so that you can find the perfect person that fits your experience. I appreciate you guys. I wanted to make sure that I talked about this topic. It's super important. It's something that I don't see too often out there. And for me, it's my world that when it's a brand new person that we're speaking to, however long it takes me to get a hold of that person, my biggest thing to emphasize to people is to really just listen into their situation and really encourage them to meet with me when it's the most convenient to them. Not necessarily for them to commit to utilizing me, but to make sure that we have a perfect fit and that we can understand each other and have solutions for each other so that we can make it the best experience possible for them. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode today. And I hope you guys appreciate this morning walk. I apologize if this is not a professional video, but I think that the important part here is to talk about something that's super important. Have a great one, guys. See you soon.